Coverage of a very complicated race. Vaughn Hilliard for us in Mississippi. I want to talk more about the racial tensions in Mississippi ahead of the runoff, including the nooses at the Capitol. I'm joined by Cliff Albright, the co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund, along with our legal contributor, Joyce Vance, who's currently a legal professor at the University of Alabama, former attorney in the Northern District of Alabama. Cliff, I want to talk to Joyce first about this because there's stuff running around my head here that says, and I've said this before, I give people the benefit of the doubt whenever they misspeak or say something that they're not sure is going to be offensive. This one has really turned out to be weird. Cindy Hyde-Smith, despite what the president said about half an hour ago, has never actually apologized for this. She's apologized after much pressure if you were offended by what she says. She has had many chances to do this, which makes me think that Cindy Hyde-Smith didn't make a mistake. It wasn't a gaffe. She wants to make sure her supporters understand that she's not pandering or going back on her view of what public hangings are.
I think that's absolutely right. She actually did, I think, something worse than not apologizing. She refused to apologize. She made it clear that anybody who might have been offended by what was an overtly racist statement, she was sorry if their feelings were hurt, but that was about the extent of it. To me, this looks like she doubled down on that comment. It would have been easy to apologize. It would have been easy to explain that she meant it a different way, but she didn't take either one of those paths.
Cliff, let's talk about Cindy Hyde-Smith, somebody who a lot of Americans didn't know about. Now they all know about. She has a history in which she has had outward support of the Confederacy, talks about the bygone days like they're something she enjoyed. She has had shown support for segregated schools, and she has made jokes within the last 2 weeks about voter suppression.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the more that we hear about her past, the more it's clear why it is that she refuses to have a conversation about race and to give a full apology. Even the thing that she's calling an apology was written on notepaper, and she had to read from. I don't know about you, but I've never given a sincere apology that I had to read notes on. And so when we look at her past, what we see is that these comments aren't just isolated incidents. They're reflective of a past that she has where she's comfortable and even pines for Confederate history, where she's experienced, lived through, and even sent her child to segregated schools or just about completely segregated schools. And so the question is, what does this mean in terms of policy? What does this mean in terms of how does this explain, or does it explain why she has certain positions, whether it's around voting rights and voter suppression or around expanding health care or living wages? And so it's not even just about her attitudes, it's also about how those attitudes show up in policy.
Joyce, what does this mean, more importantly, for the future in the Deep South, where there are a lot of people in America who think we're sort of past that level of basic racism or segregation or division of people, but in fact we've seen lots of examples where we're not. What does that say to you as a Southerner, as somebody who sort of wants to see this part of the country advance on every level into the modern era? There does seem to be a pining for days gone by on the part of whites in the South.
You know, Mississippi can certainly be more tribal than just about any place else in the country. Certainly with the president visiting and doing 2 rallies in Mississippi tonight, we'll see people retreat further into their corners. There won't be as much milling around in the middle as we would like to see as the country becomes more progressive. I don't mean politically, I just mean in terms of people engaging with folks who don't necessarily look just like them. I spoke with a consultant on one of the campaigns who told me that Alabama looks colorblind by comparison to Mississippi.
Wow.
And that's a distressing sort of an outlook. But by the same token, we've seen Doug Jones winning in Alabama in the special Senate election. Stacey Abrams ran a very close race in Georgia. And now we have a competitive race for the Senate in Mississippi, a state that hasn't sent a Democrat to the Senate in over 30 years, and a black man at that. So I think times are changing. Change may be slow. It may not always be linear. Many people are frustrated, but the reality is in the Deep South, like every place else, we have serious problems to solve in this country. We need to bring everybody to the table to solve them, no matter what their skin color or religion or national origin or anything else is. We have to all pull together, we're going to have to see that in the Deep South if there's going to be progress.
Cliff, you heard Vaughn saying that if African Americans turn out at a rate of about 90% or something, they could get up to 40% of the vote. That's still not enough for Mike Espy. He's got some white support. There's no question. There are white Democrats, and he was a member of Congress. He even has Republicans for whom he was their member of Congress who will support him. But ultimately, this still looks like Cindy Hyde-Smith's race to lose, and it's not clear that the comments she made have cost her anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. At the end of the day, you know, we focus a lot of our energy on mobilizing black voters, but there's still this segment of the population, white voters, that have got to make a decision on whether or not they want the state of Mississippi to move forward or whether they want it to be stuck in the past, in this Confederate past that Cindy Hyde-Smith seems to be so fond of. It's interesting that when you look at Alabama, as Joyce was just saying, when you look at the results of the Doug Jones election, there was an article the other day that says Alabama's tourism has increased since that election, that special election in 2017. Mississippi has got a choice to make about whether it wants its image of racism to continue to affect their standing in the rest of this country, to continue to affect their economy and their chances of businesses coming. We've already seen businesses like Walmart pulling donations. So, you know, white voters in Mississippi have really got to make a choice, and there are some voters of conscience that have been not believing that their state can change, that are going to have to come out of the shadows and support this mobilization effort that that you'll see amongst black voters for sure, but they've got to come out of the shadows and take part in changing the state.
Thank you both for your analysis. Cliff Albright is a co-founder of Black Votes Matter. Joyce Vance is a legal professor at the University of Alabama, former attorney in the Northern District of Alabama. All right, it may be nearly 3 weeks since the midterms, but